Now let's take a look at how to create our own materials. We're going to start off with the standard material, which is very commonly used in 3ds Max because it has a lot of options and it's a good general purpose material. Now this will work just fine with 3ds Max's scanline renderer as well as Mental Ray. Now we can create a standard material just by going into one of our material editors. Now if I go into the Slate material editor, as you can see, I've got some screen real estate problems here, so I'm going to go into the compact material editor, and that'll give me a little bit more room to play with. Now in the compact material editor, you can see that we have all of these different material slots. So what I can do is I can take one of these and assign a standard material and start to manipulate it. So we can do that by going here and clicking on the type of material. Now it's already a standard material, but let's just show you the process. So I'm going to click on standard, and then this brings me into the material map browser. Now this browser will always be active in the Slate material editor. But regardless of how you get there, you want to go under materials, go under scanline, and select standard. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and as you can see, we have the standard material. Now this material can take on a number of basic parameters. If we want, we can click on this and turn it into wireframe, or we can change the shading algorithm, and this is probably a little bit more important. So we can change it from blend, which is a good general purpose, to anisotropic, which is kind of more for metal. It has highlights that are not symmetrical. We can also do metal. We can do multi-layer, or in Nayar, blend is great for soft objects such as cloth. Phong is great for glass and plastic, and so is Strauss. And then we also have a translucent shader. But I'm going to keep this on blend. Now when we do this, I just need to go ahead and start changing values. So one of the basic parameters of this is the color. So I have my diffuse color here, and I can change that really to any color I want. So I'm going to go ahead and just dial in a color here. Now I want this material to be applied to the seat of my chair. So I'm going to call this seat material. And then I'm going to apply it to my chair. So I'm going to select my chair seat and do assign material to selection. So now you can see that when I manipulate these values, you can see it change on the seat. So if I change the color, for example, you can see how it changes the color of that seat. Now we have a number of other basic parameters here. Probably the most important is specular highlights. Now specular highlights are determined by the type of shader you have. So a blend will have what's called a specular level as well as glossiness. So if I dial this up, it'll make the chair look like it is made of plastic. Now specular level controls the amount of specularity, so the brightness of that highlight. And glossiness is kind of the size of it. So a larger value is a sharper highlight. Now in addition to this, we also have self-illumination. So if I want to, I can turn this up, and notice how this kind of becomes a solid color. And what this does is it creates kind of an ambient light. So if you don't want dark shadows, you can always turn this up just a little bit and it will make the object seem like it's illuminated. We can also turn on opacity. So if we want to, we can make the object totally transparent or just semi-transparent. Now in addition to these, we also have extended parameters for transparency. We have what's called super sampling, which allows us to change the way this renders. But most importantly, we have maps. And so we can get to these maps by one of two places. We can add maps here, and these maps can be 2D bitmaps or procedurals to control everything from the color of the object to its opacity to reflection and refraction. Now these slots here are also duplicated here. So if I add something into the diffuse channel here, it will show up into diffuse color here. So actually, let's go ahead and add a diffuse color. So I'm going to go here, click on this box, and then it will bring us back into the material map browser. And in this case, I'm going to select a bitmap and click OK. And when I do, it asks me to select a bitmap. Now, in my Chapter 5 project folder, I have a bitmap called Fabric Blue. I'm going to go ahead and open that. And you can see that my map has changed and my material has changed, but it's not changed in the viewport. That's because I need to click it on. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to Parent here. So I'm going to click here. That brings me up to my top level. And I'm going to show my shaded material in the viewport. So now I can see that. Now let me show you what I just did here. When I get a map attached to a channel in 3ds Max, you'll see this little M here, or I can scroll down and see the map here. If I click on this, it brings me to that map. But what it does is it brings me down a level in this browser. If I want to go back up to my parent, I have to click this button. Now this is a little bit easier in the Slate Material Editor. So if I select this and I find my material, I can first off go into Edit and clear my view. And then I'm going to double click on this material. And when I do, it will map it. And you can see here probably a little more clearly how this is constructed. So I actually have two things that are connected. So I have my main material, double click on that, and as you can see, I've got my shader basic parameters here. These are exactly the same as in my compact material editor. But I also have my bitmap, so if I double click on that, I can see this bitmap. So navigation in this is just a matter of selecting the node and double clicking. When I'm in the compact material editor, I have to navigate by going up and down to parents or back down. So now this is my basic material. And if this is going to be a fabric, well, I don't want this to be shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and just dial down my shininess here and make that more fabric-like. Now I also want to create a material for my chair base. So I'm going to go ahead and select another material slot and go base material. And in this case, it's already a standard material. So if I want, I can apply that. But in this case, I don't really want to do a blend material. I want this to be metal. It's a metal base. So I'm going to use the metal shader. Now notice how the specular level in the metal shader is a little bit different than in the blend shader. So it's actually quite a bit different. It gives a different characteristic, and that's why we have these different shaders. Now if I apply this to my selection, which is my chair base, it will go ahead and apply that. And you can kind of see how that works here in the viewport. Now if we really want to see how this works, we have to render it. Now I'm using the Scanline renderer, so I'm just going to go ahead and click Render Production and do a quick render. So as you can see, we're getting the effects that we want.